USC 30, Cal 20. The Trojans now 4-0. Mark Wrencher's TV with some instant analysis. We bring in Nick Dempsey from Conquest Chronicles to help us break down the action. Nick, 13 all, fourth quarter, 10 or 11 minutes left. This Cal team actually put up quite the fight. They're a legitimate 3-1 team, and USC after Stanford, although it wasn't as difficult as we expected, but still a difficult physical game against Stanford, then the Texas Marathon to overtime. You figured they were going to lose something, and having to go on the road to Cal didn't turn out to be an easy thing.
Yeah, I think we need to stop looking at this Cal Bears team as the what we saw from them under Sonny Dykes. They've got a much better defense. They play bend but don't break, so they still are giving up a lot of yards until the opposing offense gets to about the 35 or 40, and then they do very well to lock it down. They've got a great running game, a great running back, I should say. That guy is legit. Their young quarterback makes the mistakes that a lot of young quarterbacks make, but he is kind of impressive. He's competitive. He's kind of a gamer, and so he can do some things. A huge problem Cal had today was their best receiver was out. That hurt them quite a bit. And one of the things Cal's done really well in the first 3 weeks of the season is they're incredible in the second half. They're making some solid adjustments at halftime, and they've been through the first 3 weeks kind of average in the first half, but great in the second. And so it was a huge concern that the game was tight at halftime going into when Cal normally plays incredibly well. USC, on the other hand, was coming in. You're absolutely right. The Western Michigan game, a lot of runs there. It was kind of a more brutal game than we thought. They did dominate Stanford, but Stanford is still incredibly physical, even when they're not nearly as good. And they take something out of you. Texas absolutely came after them. Texas played probably the best game they've played in a very long time, certainly this season. And they crashed that box and beat up the USC line and running backs. So it's been a pretty grueling and emotional past couple of games for USC. So they came up here. Cal was really looking for the upset to finally end that losing streak to USC. And Cal came out and played them tough, played them tight, really took a lot of things away. They used a little bit of the Texas blueprint to stop USC, which is sort of crash the box, to contain the running game, and then, try to take away Deontay Burnett. If you do that, you could probably force a lot of mistakes and kind of slow this team down. And they did that for a while. But eventually the Trojans were able to sort of get Carr going, get Deontay Burnett sort of disguised where he was going to be and get him open. And eventually the dam sort of broke for Cal, and they started turning the ball over, which is normally what Cal does well. They take the ball away. So for them to give up, I believe it was 5 or 6 turnovers is very much out of character for them. But the USC defense, give them credit, they keep finding ways to just dominate, despite the injuries, despite the fatigue, despite all the turnovers and being on the field more than they should be. They keep finding ways to just really punish opposing teams, and they keep finding ways to keep USC in the game and sometimes just really helping them win. So I think, it was a better day for the USC offense, but I think this game, once again, you really have to give the credit to the defense for the win.
Nick Dempsey joining us from Conquest Chronicles to break down the Trojans' 4th win of the season over Cal 30-20. When we did all that preseason analysis looking at the schedule, yes, Texas was the wild card, and they turned out to be pretty good, at least on that night at the Coliseum. Of course, Stanford is Stanford, and maybe not as good as we expected, but still Stanford. This is the one game early in the season that we didn't expect to be a difficult one for the Trojans, but Cal must be for real, and Justin Wilcox doing a fine job in Cal Berkeley. Sam Darnold receiving a lot of comments, at least to Mark Rogers TV about how can you talk about this guy as being the best quarterback in football. I'm getting a lot of those comments. He throws 2 interceptions every game. Well, he threw 1 in this one. And as we've diagnosed the interception rate, a lot of them not his fault, but he pulled in a pretty pedestrian 26 of 38. Nothing wrong with that. 223 yards, so a lot of it underneath, not real explosive plays in the passing game. So your thoughts about USC's passing offense in this one?
Yeah, it's a huge concern because right now the passing offense is basically Deontay Burnett and then screens to the running backs. And that's a huge problem. Now, a lot of like the interception today was just a poorly thrown ball by Sam Darnold. It was underthrown. Had it been thrown well enough, that would have been a touchdown. But he underthrew it, and it was an easy interception. You look at, on the other hand, you look at interceptions like the pick 6 Texas had last week at the end of the first half. I mean, he hit Jalen Green right in the hands. Green was open. The ball couldn't have been more perfectly thrown. 999 times out of 1,000, that's a catch, and it just bounced right off his hands into the defender. I don't see how those types of interceptions can possibly be blamed on Darnold. But I think Darnold is trying to force things to Burnett. I understand his impulse to do that when no other receiver has, maybe a little bit Stephen Mitchell, but really nobody else has really given you concern or given you reason to throw to them in traffic or even when they're open. So he's forcing a lot of passes. He's not taking what the defense gives him. He's working on that, but someone else in this receiving game has to step up because, like I mentioned earlier, this offense has basically become Deontay Burnett and then Ronald Jones or Stephen Carr, whichever one's on the field. And so if you can try to minimize Deontay Burnett's impact, particularly in obvious passing situations, and then you could crash the box and bring 7 or 8 guys like Texas and Cal have been doing now. And I think obviously other teams are going to continue to do this. You could take out that running game. And so it's, in a lot of ways, you're almost playing, when USC's on offense, you're almost playing 8 versus 11 because you've got 1 running back, your 1 receiver, and then your quarterback on offensive line versus a full 11 guys. And so they kind of got one hand behind their back if these receivers can't step up and they could spread the ball around. Last season, they had Juju Smith and several other weapons that they could spread it around, and lots of guys stepped up. Deontay Burnett was their 3rd best receiver, and that guy usually needs double coverage to be stopped. When your wide receiver 3 needs double coverage, it's easy to spread the ball around. But when you don't have that, when you have just a 1 to 2 guys you can actually rely on, it really makes it very much easier to stop them. In fact, opposing teams have flat out said, yeah, we're fine with single coverage on any of these guys. We're fine with putting 8, sometimes even 9 in the box because, we can win those one-on-one matchups against everybody but Burnett. So Darnold needs to kind of not go for a home run ball to Burnett every time. He needs to take what the defense is giving him. But the wide receivers need to help him out here. I'm not going to say it's all on Darnold. I'm not going to say it's all on the wide receivers, but man, they've got to get it together because if they don't, they're heading towards a collapse. If this doesn't get any better, because there's only so many different ways you can disguise where Deontay Burnett's going to go. There's only so many different ways you can disguise his routes. And as you go further on in the season and you see more and more tape, it's going to get a lot easier for opposing defenses. And the other concern is right now, what happens if Deontay Burnett gets injured? Are they going to throw screens to Carr and Rojo, Rojo's also injured at the moment? That's a huge concern. So somebody else has got to start doing something, and Sam's got to keep giving them chances. I know he probably doesn't want to, but somebody else has got to step up. And I don't know who that is, but they're dangerously close to being one-dimensional entirely. And the defense can only bail them out for so long. The defense also, the injuries are racking up, particularly because Clancy Pendergast does not rotate guys at all, doesn't give them rest. He just wants his best 11 guys no matter what. And so they're getting run down, and they're getting fatigued, and their injury count's racking up, and it's only September, and they don't have a bye week. So the defense on the other end on the other side could also be heading towards a collapse if more and more of these injuries keep piling up and they're not getting guys rest. So they're kind of playing with fire. I think they need to keep making some adjustments, maybe rotate more guys, get some more receivers to step up, find new ways to get Burnett and the running backs in the passing game in the meantime. But eventually you can really see that at some point a team is going to be able to exploit these weaknesses, or it's, the shortcomings are just going to be too much to overcome. But at the same time, man, until Darnold and this team proves otherwise, you just kind of got to go with them because they play incredibly clutch. Sometimes you wonder how they got into that situation in the first place, but they just kind of keep winning games when the pressure's on late. So you got to give them credit for that, but you could definitely see there's some troubles looming.
USC 30-20 over Cal. The Trojans now 2 for 2 in the Pac-12 with a couple wins over the North Division. You're joining us for instant analysis right here on Mark Rogers TV. So each and every Saturday, I try to join you for instant analysis as the seconds tick off the clock. So right when that game goes final, we're joining you for instant analysis and breakdown on some of the key 3 to 4 games each and every Saturday. Nick Dempsey from Conquest Chronicles breaking down USC and Cal. You mentioned the defense, and anytime you hold just about anybody in the Pac-12, especially a hot Cal team on the road, to what was 20 points, but the last touchdown kind of a tack on with about 2 minutes left, but 13 points through that entire game. Jack Jones, a guy that you've talked up for a long time, with 2 interceptions in this game, the Trojans with 4. Now, short week, going to Washington State, a game that we circled and talked about a number of times, Nick, during the offseason is, okay, if USC gets off to the kind of start that we expect, this could be a tricky one. Strange things happen in Pullman, especially one of those late night, weeknight games, Friday night. Washington State at last glance, 35-0 at half against Nevada today. So we should be looking at a good one on Friday night.
Yeah, and if not a good one, certainly a weird one, or it should be wild. I think it's always interesting. Washington State's always interesting because the air raid always presents a unique challenge for defenders, and it requires a ton of patience. But at the same time, Washington State has proven themselves capable of beating a very good ranked team and then also losing to an FCS team in the same month. In fact, I think they did it last year when they destroyed Stanford and then lost to Eastern Washington or something. I don't know. But it's
always Eastern Washington or Portland
somebody.
State or somebody like that up there.
So when Washington State has it clicking, and man, are they good when they do. But then sometimes when they don't have it clicking, they're just like the worst team ever. So Washington State is looking pretty sharp so far, but they've got some question marks. It's going to be tough to turn around on a short week, especially with all the nagging injuries. They don't get that extra time to maybe rest up and then come out and sort of face this different, unique type of defense or offense. So that's going to be and Washington State and Mike Leach, they're going to come out swinging and taking shots, and it's just going to be a very unique challenge. It's not going to be quite the same as playing, say, Stanford or Texas, where a bunch of big physical guys are going to crash the box and all these sorts of things. But I wouldn't expect a power running game. There's no Bryce Love on this Washington State team per se, but it's going to be different, and they've got a short amount of time to sort of get up to speed with it and go on the road. And it's always hard to go up to Pullman and win. Even when Washington State is not very good, it's just a wild, weird place to play, and it's going to be some Pac-12 after dark, weeknight Pac-12 after dark. So that one could be very interesting, but right now I think USC just needs to get back to LA, rest up, figure out what they need to do, and then when it's time to worry about Pullman, they'll worry about Pullman.
All right,
which is
Mark
probably
Rogers TV,
tomorrow.
talking USC and Cal. Trojans win it 30-20 to move to 4-0. And Cal also a story there in the Pac-12 North. It's going to be interesting when they run into the likes of Stanford, Oregon, Washington State, Washington, to see if they may be a factor in that division based on what they've shown us against the likes of North Carolina, Ole Miss, and now USC. Even in a loss, 13-13, 10 minutes left, the Cal Golden Bears are a different football team here in 2017. So this is what you get at Mark Rogers TV. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Get the audio version, the full-length conversation with guys like Nick Dempsey from Conquest Chronicles. We bring in the best bloggers and broadcasters from college football, and you get the long-format conversation and the instant analysis. And join us on Podbean, iTunes, and Stitcher for the audio in particular. All right, Nick, we appreciate you breaking things down for us.
Of course, Mark, anytime.